In this course, on several occasions, we have talked about the symmetries of system. Okay, system that we study, and in this video, and next one, and maybe next to next, we would start talking about how symmetries that are present in the system provide us with certain conservation laws. Okay, that's the thing which we want to have in this video. But before I start talking about symmetries and corresponding conservation laws, I want to settle few minor things. So I will talk first about two things. One is what is called Euler's theorem, a very simple theorem, and also about Einstein's summation convention. Okay, so that's how we will start this lecture. Okay, so as I said, I want to talk about Euler's theorem. Okay, so idea is simple. Imagine you have some function which is a polynomial function. Okay, in let's say two variables to begin with. Let's say I have some function h of, let me make h slightly simpler, x, y. Okay, and I am looking right now at a function of degree 2. So h is polynomial in degree 2. So I could have something like this. You could have x square, y square plus xy. Okay, you can multiply some coefficients here. Now, even though it's not even though, I mean, it's a degree 2 polynomial, but another special thing about this polynomial is it is homogeneous. Okay, it's a homogeneous function, meaning each term is of degree 2. So this has 2 powers here. This also has 2 powers. This also has 2 powers, because 1 power of x, 1 power of y. Okay, so that this h is a homogeneous function. If I add a term like c3x here, then this h is no longer a homogeneous function. Okay, so let's take a homogeneous function. Now, if I take a partial derivative with respect to x, for example, so let's say I take del h over del x. Now, when I do so, I remove 1 power of x from each term. So from here, 1 power of x will be gone. From here, it will be gone, meaning this will give you a 0. This one has 1 power of x, so that will be gone, and you will be left only with y. Okay, so that's what happens whenever you take a derivative with respect to one of the variables. That power is gone, but if you multiply x, you put that power back. Okay, so let me let's say we take x square. Okay, so what I'm saying is del x square over del x is 2x, but if you multiply with x again, you get 2x square, which is what you had originally, except for this factor of 2. And this factor 2 you have got because the 2 here. Okay, let's look at what happens when you look at this term. Okay, so again, by taking a partial derivative, I remove a factor of x, but when I multiply the x again, that is back, and I get xy. Okay, so you can already see probably that if I take a function which is homogeneous of second degree, then the following is going to happen. If you take, in this case for h, x del h over del x plus y del h over del y, then you are going to get 2h. Okay, because when you do this, you get a 2x square. I mean, if there is a c1 factor c1 here, your c1 will be again here. Okay, and then when del over del x acts on this, it gives 0. But when you do a partial derivative with respect to y, it will generate another y square term. Okay, in addition, you'll have a factor of 2. And this one here, which you may realize that this will not create a power of 2 by taking partial derivative with x or with y, but when you add them, because you're adding here, this addition will create the 2 powers. So here you will have y del by del y of xy, that will again generate xy, right? And then when you add these two, you get 2xy. So it's clear that if I take partial derivatives and multiply with those relevant variables and sum over the all variables, I get the function back, and what shows up here as a coefficient is the degree of that polynomial or that function. So clearly, if this was a degree 3 function, a homogeneous function of degree 3, you would have gotten a 3 here. Okay, that's what is Euler's theorem. So it says, if h with, let's say, lots of several variables x n is a homogeneous function of degree n, degree m, okay, then if you take the partial derivative with respect to all these variables and multiply them with the same variable again, and you sum over all variables, then you'll get the same function back, and the coefficient will be the degree of that function. Okay, and that's Euler's theorem. Okay, that's one thing which I wanted to talk about. Just hold on for a second. Okay, so another thing is that you see I'm writing down lots of summation symbols like here. Okay, so I have to write these summation symbols lots of times, and they appear very frequently in your equations, so they make your equation look not so simple. So what I will do is I will stop writing the summation symbols, and I can, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so I did something here. Let's see. Okay, I should remove it. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so you see, if I have to write, let's say, a dot product a dot b, a dot b, okay, two vectors a and b in 3 dimensions, let's say, then I will write this as a alpha b alpha, and summation alpha runs from 1 to 3. Okay, that's what I have been doing till now, things of this sort. But really, I don't need to write this summation symbol, because I can make a shorthand notation and say whenever such a summation appears, I will just drop it and write simply a alpha b alpha. Okay, and I will remind myself that there is a summation over alpha, because I can notice that the alpha appears twice. So whenever an index appears twice, I will know that I was summing over it. Okay, and this is a very powerful thing, which is I mean, from what I'm saying, it's not evident why it's so powerful right now. It just looks like a simple way of, or a neater way of writing things, but this becomes very powerful when you are dealing with tensors. So dropping this summation symbol is called Einstein's summation convention. Einstein summation convention. Okay, which just says repeated. If in an expression you see a repeated index, there is a summation implied there. Okay, if the summations have been dropped. Maybe I'll give you a simple exercise to do. Let's say you have two vectors a and b which are given to you. Okay, and if I ask you to write a dot b square using Einstein summation convention, how would you write it? Okay, a dot b is ai bi. So I have the index I getting repeated twice. Now I have another a dot b still remaining because there is a square. I should write again aj bj. Okay, now you see I have not written ai bi again, I have written aj bj. And what you have to do is you have to convince yourself that it would be disastrous to use again the index I. So meaning if instead of writing this you had written ai bi, you get a wrong answer, and it's obvious, but I will leave it to you to figure it out. Okay, so here we make a rule. Once you have done this exercise, you will understand why I'm making this rule. So we make a rule that any index should not appear more than twice. Okay, because if it does, then you are making mistakes. Then you are whatever you are writing is not correct. Okay, so that will be a rule. Can appear at most twice. Only twice. Okay, so you will have, if an index is repeated, meaning if there is a summation over it, then it should appear in that expression only 2 times, not more. Okay, there may be some cases where an index is repeated but comes more than 3 times or more than 2 times, but then there we will make a specification. We will tell clearly that this index is repeated and there is a summation over this index also. But if I don't say anything, and if you see a repeated index twice, then there is a summation. If I don't specify anything and you see a repeated index appearing more than 2 times, then I have made a mistake. Okay, that will be what it is. Okay, so henceforth I will never write a summation symbol. Okay, so good. So I'll use Einstein summation convention and also use Euler's theorem for homogeneous functions, and use them to look at our kinetic term which we had in the Lagrangian. Okay, that's what we'll do. So let's go to maybe next page. Okay, recall that the kinetic energy term, okay, in the Lagrangian, when you're using generalized coordinates, has the following form. The T is T0 plus T1 plus T2. Okay, where T0 is of degree 0 in generalized velocities. Okay, I hope you remember this. Degree 0 in generalized velocities, so q dots. This guy is linear, meaning degree 1 in generalized velocities, and t2 is quadratic or degree 2 in q dots. Okay, and maybe I can write, yeah, that's fine. So let's look at this expression one by one. So look at t0 term first. There is not much to see because maybe let's first look at t1. Okay, let's look at first t1. So if I take t1, right, then if I take a derivative of t1 with respect to q alpha dot, I remove a power of alpha dot, then I multiply q alpha dot here, I insert that power back again. Okay, and if there is a summation implied because the alpha is repeated twice here. Okay, so there is a summation here, and you know, sorry, I'm looking at t1. You know that you will get t1 back. The coefficient here, which is multiplying, is 1. Okay, because it's a function of degree 1. Let's look at this delta t2, which is quadratic, alpha dot q alpha dot, again there is a summation implied, and you know what you'll get, you get t2. Okay, and here there is no dependence on generalized velocity, so this one q alpha dot, there is no need to do the summation, it's 0 anyway. Okay, so that's what we get, which means in general, if you are taking a derivative of q alpha dot, okay, this will not be proportional to t. This will not be proportional to t. Okay, it will not be proportional to t because this guy becomes 2 times t2, this guy becomes t1, and this guy is 0. Okay, so it cannot be proportional to t in general. That's one thing. Yeah, but if, let's say, for some reason which we'll talk about soon, your t was just t2. Okay, let's say your t had only the quadratic pieces. So if t is equal to t2, then q alpha dot delta t over del q alpha dot, okay, that will be 2 times t, if this is the situation. Perfect. Okay, now let's proceed. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is time translation symmetry. Okay, and we will see what follows from there. So imagine you have a system that is isolated from everything else, okay, which is not being influenced by something else. So imagine you have some set of particles which are interacting with each other in some manner, and but there's no external influence on that system, so there is no external agency which is exerting forces on this. So you know that the Lagrangian of this system would not depend explicitly on time. Okay, it would depend implicitly on time through the coordinates of the generalized coordinates or Cartesian coordinates, in whichever manner you are writing. The time dependence will be implicit through the coordinates, but not explicit. Okay, which is what you expect from an isolated system. And that's let's say we have such a system. Okay, so let's say we have an isolated system. Now if you have such a system, then your Lagrangian, so by Q I mean all the entire set of generalized coordinates, and Q dot the entire set of generalized velocities. Okay, I'm not talking about any one-dimensional system. This is a multi-dimensional. It has several degrees of freedom. Okay, so if this is the case, then you will not have a dependence on t. And let's see what the consequence of this is. To do so, I want to look at the total derivative of the Lagrangian. Okay, so I want to look at what dl over dt is. Okay, so for now what I will do is, even though I'm interested in such a system, I will keep it general. So I will keep L to depend on Q dot and T, and later I will put the time, I will remove the time dependence. Okay, so for now we'll keep general. So any system, maybe something is influencing from outside, all those things are here now. So del L over del T, so I just do the chain rule and get del L over del T plus del L over del Q alpha Q alpha dot. Now I should also differentiate L with respect to Q alpha dots, because L is a function of all Q and Q dots. Okay, Q alpha double dot, and Einstein summation convention is being used right now. Okay, now this relation by itself cannot tell you anything. It cannot tell you because I have not put any information on how the system evolves with time. Okay, for that I need to put the equations of motion into this. Okay, so I'm going to now throw in the information about how system evolves, meaning I will use Euler-Lagrange equations here, which says that del L over del Q alpha dot d over dt minus del L over del Q alpha is 0. Okay, so I'm assuming right now that all the forces that you have are conservative, so I can write them in the Lagrangian itself, and on the right hand side you don't have any leftover generalized forces. Okay, so I'm imagining a system with conservative forces. Okay, so that's the equation of motion. Which I want to substitute here, meaning what I'll do is I'll take this term del L over del Q alpha and substitute this. So this is the total derivative of L with total derivative of del L over del Q alpha dot. So that's what I'm going to put in here. So it says dl over dt equals del L over del T plus Q alpha dot d over dt delta L over delta Q alpha dot plus Q alpha double dot. Okay, Q alpha dot. Okay, I hope you can see that these two terms, this one and this one, both these terms can be combined together. It's clear. So I write del over del T of the Lagrangian, the partial derivatives, then d over dt of Q alpha dot del L over del Q alpha dot. Is it clear? So when this total derivative acts on Q alpha dot, it generates Q double dot, and this one remains. So this is the second term, And when you take the first term, leave the first term without acting with the derivative, and the derivative acts on the second term, you get this piece. Okay, this one. So this relation is correct. And now you have total derivatives on both the sides of equation. So I can bring them together and write d over dt q alpha dot delta L over del q alpha dot minus L minus L, and that equals minus del L over del T. And that is correct. Yes. So I've taken the del L over del T on the other side. Now you see, if your system is isolated, then L does not depend explicitly on time, meaning the partial derivative with respect to time would be 0. So the right hand side would be 0. Okay, this would be 0 for an isolated system. And if that is the case, then this quantity would be conserved, because the total derivative of that quantity in the round brackets will be 0. Okay, which means whichever way your system is moving, that quantity does not change. It's a constant of integration. So it makes sense to define in general, not necessarily for an isolated system. Let's say we define in general this quantity to be h, and this h depends on q, whatever the generalized velocities are, because they appear in the Lagrangian, right? So L has q dependence, q dots, L has t. Okay, so I define h q dot t to be q alpha dot delta L over del q alpha dot minus L. Okay, and you're summing over all the, maybe this time I will just write. Okay, so this quantity is called the Hamiltonian of this system. Okay, generally Hamiltonian will have generalized momentum as it's in its argument, but for now let's also call this as a Hamiltonian. So what you see is, for a general system, d over dt of h equals minus del L over del t. Let me put a box around it. Okay, now I wanted to make the remark about isolated system. Okay, now if your system is isolated, it has no time explicit time dependence, that is 0, which implies that h is a conserved quantity. Okay, so d over dt of h will be 0, meaning the Hamiltonian is conserved. Is conserved. Okay, that's good. Not only that, you don't I mean, even if your system was not isolated, even if it was interacting with another system, or let's say if your system was put in an external field which does not depend on time. Okay, now if it does not depend on time, or its correspondingly its potential does not depend on time, then the Lagrangian will not depend explicitly on time, and del L over del T, the partial derivative of L with respect to time, will still be 0, and again you will have Hamiltonian as a conserved quantity for that system. Okay, so even for a system in a conservative field, okay, you still get h to be conserved. And note that your h is a first integral of motion. Okay, because remember what the functional form of first integrals was. Your first integral depends only on generalized velocity and coordinates and time possibly. Okay, it does not depend on it's not something involving a second derivative of time. So which means if I give you an expression with h equal to constant, then this is a differential equation of first order. Okay, so you immediately get a first integral of motion if you know that this system has a symmetry of time translation. Okay, that's one nice thing, but we still need to know, or would like to know, what h is physically. Okay, from here it's not evident what h is, and that's what we want to do. To figure out what h is, and that's not hard. Let me see how I want to do it. Okay, that's good. So here we go. So let me remind you what okay, physical interpretation of h. Okay, so as we said that the kinetic energy term is T0, and T0, let me write down. If you go back to your notes, you will find this expression. It delta Ri over delta T. Okay, and R is a function of the generalized coordinates and velocities. Generalized coordinates and time. Mi, I is the label of the particle, and you have a half. I omit putting a summation because the index I is repeated twice, so it's clear that there is a summation involved here. Okay, your kinetic energy is scalar, so this term has to be scalar, and clearly this is being dotted into itself. Then you have a linear term, and the linear term was mi delta Ri over delta T dot delta Ri over delta Q alpha, and you have a Q alpha dot. Okay, so I have two summations involved in here. The index I is repeated twice, actually thrice. So this is one of the cases where you will see that even though it's appearing thrice, there is nothing wrong. Okay, so this is perfectly fine. And if you have not seen such things before, make sure that you sit down and convince yourself that this is fine, there is no issue. It's not violating our rule which we announced that an index cannot appear more than twice. Okay, and then your alpha is also repeated, so there is a sum over alpha also. That is good. And then you have mi is a half delta Ri over delta Q alpha delta Ri over delta Q beta Q alpha dot Q beta dot. Perfect. And sometimes I will write this as this piece as half A alpha beta times Q alpha dot Q beta dot. This is, I'm writing only for the quadratic term, the last piece. Okay, so just to remind you, your Ri's are too many times R is involved. Q1 to whatever the number of degrees of freedom your system has, which we were writing, I believe, 3n minus k. Yes. Okay. And in general, there could be time dependence as well. Okay, that's good. Also recall your L is t minus u. Okay, and now construct H. Now let's look at the Hamiltonian. Your H is, where is it? Here. Q alpha dot minus L. Okay, so let me write it down. Yeah, let's see what it will be. Q alpha dot del by del Q alpha dot. That is good. Now your L is t minus u, so let me write it here for once. Minus L. Okay. Now your u does not depend on generalized velocities. So I'm not looking at those cases where your potential could depend on generalized velocities. So I'm not looking at, for example, electrodynamics. Okay, so that is not being considered here right now. Now if that is the case, then this is simply Q alpha dot del T over del Q alpha dot minus L. Okay, that's fine. Now this becomes Q alpha. Okay. Now we will use our Euler's theorem, which says that if you take a partial derivative and insert Q alpha, that coordinate again, and sum over all the coordinates, you will get, if the function is homogeneous, then you will get the same function back multiplied by the degree of that function. So when this acts on T0, let me write it like this way: Q alpha dot del over del Q alpha dot, just being just writing everything explicitly here. Okay, so what do we get? We get, when this acts, it gets 0, so this term is gone. When this acts on T1, you get T1 back, because T1 is homogeneous, degree 1, so you get T1. When this piece acts on T2, Euler's theorem says you get 2T2, and anyway you have minus L. L is T minus U, which is T0 plus T1 plus T2 minus U. Okay, the potential energy, which becomes, so I have a T1 which cancels. There is a T2, a minus T2, so you get a T2 and minus T0 plus U. I hope that's correct. Let me see. Perfect. Or let me write it as T2 plus U minus T0. So nothing very illuminating when you have an arbitrary system. But imagine your transition from Cartesian coordinates to generalized coordinates does not involve time. So let's say this time dependence is not there. Okay, if that time dependence is not there, then this term will be 0. Okay, because it involves partial derivatives. This term will be 0 because of the partial derivative involved here, and this term will survive because there are no partial derivatives with respect to time. Okay, so in that case, your T will be homogeneous degree 2. Okay, so if, let me see, yeah, so if there is no explicit time dependence, so let me remove the T. then your T is equal to T2, only the quadratic piece. If that is the case, then your Hamiltonian will be T2, or which is same as T now, plus U, because T naught is gone and T2 is T. That you know, that is kinetic energy plus potential energy, which is the total energy of that system. So let me write down here, total energy of the system. Okay, so in general, H, the Hamiltonian, does not have this interpretation of total energy, but whenever your system does not have explicit time dependence, okay, in the Lagrangian, and also when you are going from the Cartesian coordinates to the generalized coordinates, okay, you will not require any explicit time dependence in going from R to Q's, okay, then your Hamiltonian is the total energy. Okay, in that case you can interpret the Hamiltonian to be the total energy. I think I'll stop this video here, and next time we'll take a simple example where I will do some explicit calculations about the Hamiltonian, so that we get some practice in also doing the calculations and also get an understanding of what the Hamiltonian is. Okay, that's what will be the plan for next video, and we stop this one here. See you later.